Well, welcome everybody. Thank you very much for taking some time to join us on a Monday night. If you're in the Northeast, you probably couldn't be doing anything else anyway. If you're, in the Midwest anyway, weather, well, you're just going to laugh at us anyway. So we're here having some good times tonight. And in case you can't tell, MJ's shirt or MJ's attire is like, the theme of the night. If you've got kids and you watch Muppet Babies, like Nanny's socks are the theme of the show, MJ's shirt is the theme of the show.
Okay.
And it's a stretch, but it works, right?
Yeah, all right. We'll go with it. I just want to start off by saying I got my token. I got next. Anybody old enough to remember that? I got next. And I literally do have, this isn't it. This just happened to be a coin here that somebody gave me. Because I collect coins from around the world. People give me coins from all over the place. But I actually do have in my coin collection a token from the very first arcade we had in our town. It was called the Funway Freeway. And I literally have a token from the Funway Freeway. Because back then you didn't put quarters in. You had to put your money in something else to get tokens before you could go play the game. And then if you didn't play all of them, you didn't have a quarter. You had a token. You had to come back.
Yep. That was the point. That was exactly what they do. And some of the places
like DJing, you have to have a controller and a real software, not some software that mixes for itself. No, I'm kidding. Yes, but you can choose to do it yourself. The other one, you don't have that. I'm sorry. I'm rambling. I'm excited tonight.
It's okay. You are. We tapped into our inner children tonight, just to be able to have some fun. If you did not see the description, if you did not see the cool things that Jimmy had put together for us for our artwork, it's going to be great. But we want to know tonight, we're going to be talking about video games. Obviously, they had an impact on us in some form or fashion. No, not at all, right, MJ? Some form or fashion, but this transformation or somehow our playing video games has somehow had an influence into us in DJing. And when John first brought this up, I said, I got to think about this. And the more I thought about it, the more excited I got about it, because I was thinking about all my old games, got out my old system, like when I was a toddler system.
And I think this is one of those areas where we talk about music and the music influence that got us going. We're always, I remember it was maybe this band or we were in this club and then that, but it's like there's a lot of the DJ side that's really into technology, and a lot of that technology, the love of that technology, stemmed from things like what's right over your shoulder right there, Dan. And it's really kind of a neat thing when you start talking about it and people start sharing how there's so much similarities of kind of our base of that technology, that love of technology, which was gaming.
Absolutely. So where should we start tonight? Should we just hand it over to MJ and we'll just kick back and take a drink?
What I want to do is I want to shut off the Wi-Fi because that buzz is in here again. I forgot to shut off the Wi-Fi.
I'm not hearing it.
I'm not hearing it
here.
Not hearing it?
No.
Okay, cool then. All right, so what I want to start with is, since we're talking about music, is that even now today, you can go to YouTube and you can find YouTube channels built around what's called 8-bit music. And that's what the basic games back in the day had, was 8-bit music. And what it was like we have our 64-bit programs. They were very basic tones. And originally, some of them were only tones that could have been made by physical hardware, diodes and different things that made buzzing sounds. And that's how some of the original ones started. But that's where I think some of our music and the different things that we love in what we do with this came from, is that whole 8-bit music scene. And I have a lot to share with the beginning of that. But that's something, if you want to know what 8-bit music sounds like, if you ever played the game Tetris, that's 8-bit music. There's only so many tones, and they're very electronic, and that's kind of what that is. So,
but let's even go back earlier than that to the very first system that a lot of us, Dan, you're too young for this, so this will be an MJ and myself talking this, all the way back to an Atari introduced Pong, and we had this game that now had some sound effects, and we could do things and if you got into it, there was a pattern and a rhythm to the play. And if you started to, by how fast it was going and the timing and different things, and you basically got that concept of timing was introduced, I think, with Pong. It was the first shot of being able to control something that would affect that timing, and that having that more than just a board game. And it was incredible as a probably about an 8 to 10-year-old touching Pong for the very first time and saying, "Oh my gosh, the doors that had opened at that point."
We had one, and I don't think it was the Atari. It was another brand, and you know how, because like people made copy ones. We had one that both had Pong, and it had the gun that shot the little. As the dot went around the screen, you would shoot it and see how many times you could hit the dot bouncing around the screen. So there was so much with that beginning stuff, because you guys take it for granted. Anybody's old enough to remember when the first smartphones came around? It was that kind of buzz back then. It was just unheard of. You had to go to the arcade. It didn't matter. You were going. It was all about high scores. I think somewhere in the house, no joke, I'm pretty sure it's got to be here, a 45 of Pac-Man Fever. That would be a 45 record, for those of you who don't know, a record that spins at 45 revolutions per minute of Pac-Man Fever, which was an actual radio hit. I got a pocket full of quarters, and I'm heading to the arcade. That's how the song started, and that's all you needed to know right there. So it was so big back then, and there was so much influence for me, because on the music, like I said, I told many of you that I grew up in a very creative household with a lot of stuff. A lot of people played instruments and sang and did artwork and stuff, and so music was part of it. And as my generation came around to the electronic stuff, so of course I wanted electronic music. I don't want to play an instrument, which I did play drums, and I took piano too, but I wanted computer stuff. I wanted to make music on computers. Am I going too far ahead?
No.
Stay back.
This is all part of the process of
so,
how we get there. Yeah.
So when I was a young buck, and I mean young, I asked for this for Christmas, and still have it. Many of you are asking, why do I have a keyboard? Back in the day, in the early 80s, this was the entire computer.
That was
everything. And you ask, well, did you have a monitor for it? Of course we did not have a monitor for it. You hooked it up to your TV through this thing. And it plugged into the back, and it had this squirrely 5-plug thing like the S-Video kind of does, and that's how you plugged it into the back of the computer. And I got to make room for stuff here. Hold on. Sorry about that. And you actually could play video games on it, and we had the fancy button one. And that was 2 buttons was the butt kicking thing. You have no idea. Hold on here. My computer's doing something. No, you're debugging something. I don't know. It's debugging that. You're good here. But I think honestly, some of my, now that we're advancing a little bit here ahead of this, but the arcade buttons was what I think got me started with where I felt so comfortable with controllers, because you're smashing buttons all day long on those things. You're like, so I can play all day long. I can do that forever, because that's what you learn to do, all that stuff. Yeah. And that's what I think got me started with those two. But the balance that got me kicked off, and we can go anywhere you want from this, was this: you actually put cartridges in, and you can play games with it too besides programming. It programmed a language called BASIC, which pretty much was useless about the time that I learned it. It didn't have much use after that. It just there. But I learned basic language and got to get my foot in the door when I was a child. I'm thinking it was like 83, 84, something like that, maybe, on that computer. But it had this VIC-20 Music Composer. And it is a cartridge. I'll pull it out here. And it was the giant cartridge. And basically what it was it became digital, I'm blanking on the word now. Staffs.
Yeah. The stanzas.
Thank you. Why couldn't I come up with that word?
Yeah.
But basically it was digital stanzas, and you could both pre-program your notes, or keys on this thing would be your keyboard, and you could play them, and it was 8-bit music. So I was getting to make music way back then on a computer, and I thought that I was the coolest person on the planet. Now, when I opened this up, and like I said, we can take it anywhere we want from here, I found this little piece of paper in here, and it had some notations. Can that be seen or not? I can't tell.
It's all
Hold on. Put that over the side there.
Nope, all washed out.
Yeah, it's just a couple of black dots that we see.
Well, that's kind of all it is. It's lines and black dots. Anyways, it's lines and black dots, but it is the notation for the Close Encounters of the Third Kind song. So I was able to play this song do 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 on the computer. And that was a big thing back then. So I was like the nerdiest kid where I figured out how to do the Close Encounters of the Third Kind music on this Commodore VIC-20 and this thing wherever it's at. I just put it there. It is VIC Composer. So that was the beginning of the music era for me when it came to video games, because I heard the music that was played there. I had read the little, because like obviously we had magazines back then that had the stuff about the music, who wrote the music and where it came from. And there was people that were stars known as 8-bit composers, and they had a full living that they built around games making that. And that's where I began with all of this. Nerded the heck out on all of it, but that's my beginning to that. And I think that it had a big influence in as I went further into music, because I got to jump in on digital music from the very beginning. Mm-hmm. I know that's a lot, so I just wanted to tie that all together. That's where I began. And I move all this out of the way. This thing is literally almost the same size as my computer keyboard, and I have an oversized ergonomic keyboard, but it had all little plugs on the back, so you can see. So
what would that have had? About 128K?
Yeah, 20.
20K.
Yeah, it was, because the 64 was 64-bit.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
And you literally, on one of the plugs, you plugged in a tape recorder, and you could record the program you wrote. You know, like if you ever heard someone play, like nowadays you don't hear it, but when you had dial up and you heard it, that's what it sounded like on the tape. And somewhere I still have those tapes. So if I wanted to hook this up, I could pull out some of the stuff I programmed and play back Close Encounters of the Third Kind on a 50-year-old or 40-year-old, however it is, program. I lived that life. I mean, people wonder how at my age I'm still so up on electronics, because it just has always been part of my life. I've always been interested in it. So, show's over. No, I'm kidding.
So Dan, your computer experience doesn't go quite that far, but our gaming experience doesn't quite go back that far. But
no, mine started at a much. I mean, mine started probably from, I don't know, 3 years old. Like, I have older brothers, so I'm the youngest. The one that was closest to me in age in the house was 14 years older than I was. So what ended up happening was they had a ColecoVision, and that's what that is. And if you've never heard of it, this is like PlayStation versus Xbox, right? ColecoVision was one and Atari would be the other. But the funny thing was, you could actually take the Atari and stick it into the Coleco and play all of your Atari games with the 2-button controllers, the black with the orange and all that stuff, along with the Coleco ones. And you talked about 2 buttons. I got you beat here.
Oh, he's got it. No.
I got you beat. I'd look like, okay, so if you know, we're going to talk, we're really going old school here. It was like a phone with buttons on the side, and this was your joystick, right? This was your moving them back and forth and up and down and everything else, and so it was it was kind of funny. It was like there was pole position and old school game and that, but because my brothers were older, they were off to play than really at that age, but it really was one of those things where it taught me a lot of hand-eye coordination, and so when I got into playing an instrument and playing piano or playing drums, it was one of those things where it's very easy, and also got to the point where my hand-eye coordination it's not what it was then, but it's still been able to be really good, where I can switch controllers, like brands and types and everything else, and you give me not even 5 minutes, and I'm suddenly just playing on them like I'd always played. And for those of you who are like, well, what's the big deal? If you're not really sure, like Denon and Pioneer, one is a mirror image, one is a duplicate, and so as a result, the buttons are not in the same spot, so it makes it difficult if you're so in tune with just one. So I've always been one of those that kind of always been able to go back and forth and have that aspect. But the Coleco, that was, I had that until I was about, and I switched. And I still remember like you know, as MJ was saying, like, this is what people talked about. This is what people did. Like, I remember just like wanting this system. Like, Mom, I have to have this. Like, you know, I need to ask sync coordination that I think I really took away. This is kind of like a weird aspect if you think about it, but I really learned the idea of longevity. All right. And follow my bouncing logic with this for a moment. But the games that we played in the Coleco and the Nintendo and even some of these other ones, they might be long games, like especially like Xbox. You can play a game for 50, 60 hours, but you're not playing that for one sitting. All right. Super Mario Brothers, Rampage. All right. These are games that if you played and you tried to beat, took you 3-4 hours to beat, and there was no saving it. Like there was no stopping halfway through. There was a pause. You could take a little break, but if you turned it off, it was off. Like you had to start back at the beginning. So, you know, I learned a couple different things. I learned my love, obviously, for electronics. I really attribute my hand-eye coordination to all the games that I played growing up. And then what led me to, again, I mean, it's like I said, it's kind of a joke, but just that idea of longevity, just continually going, not giving up, because I want to get to the end. Like I want to be able to beat this game and have it until the end. So.
That's funny. I hadn't thought about that, but yeah, that does. The kids are all about. We gotta save 2 minutes. We'll be ready to. We gotta save, and yeah, it was something.
It was die or turn it off.
Yeah.
Like
it's all auto save now.
Yeah.
So it's
kids these days. They don't know what it was like having to wait for a save point. That's another system. Anyway.
See, to me, again, some of the games played right into my love for technology and programming, because you could have cheat codes. From some of the early games, you could have cheat codes.
Mm-hmm. Up, down, left, right, BA, select, start.
Yes, thank you. I was hoping you would know that. I didn't remember it, but somebody did.
Contra. Yep.
Yeah. So there are all kinds of stuff like that. So as we move into like the digital age of stuff, me programming all the stuff you see me do, that was what I was doing back there with the games. I was trying to get mods and stuff. And even when we went to some of the PC games, you know, in the 90s, you could get, you know, I literally had, no joke, I had the first Grand Theft Auto when it was an overhead game and illegal in this country. I don't remember how I got it downloaded online, because they said it was too violent, it was illegal, and I ended up getting it, playing it, and thought I was so shocked, because halfway you're driving the car around, then all of a sudden it'll go, rampage killing spree, see how many you can kill. And it was like, what? I don't want to kill anybody, you know? But that's all. You just had so many seconds with your machine gun. It was, like I said, it was an overhead game at that point. So a lot of my always doing these little things with computers have always been a part of that, even with the games, with the hacks, the add-ons. Some, like I said, some of the early PC games getting a part of groups that were online to where someone would make a new map or if it's a course for a racing game, and you could get it and just keep playing the same game with new stuff all the time. So there's a lot there that you don't think about in electronics, that you're hands-on participating in something that's kind of what we're doing DJing. And I don't want to call DJing playing a game. But to me, the mentality is kind of the same, because I'm still working that crowd like I'm stalking someone in a shooter game. You know, I'm trying to trick, you know, because one of the games I play is called Sniper Elite, and you can throw a rock and get someone's attention. You know, so if they're behind a building, you can throw a rock and they'll come out to see what the rock is, and you could shoot them. So it's like the crowd. I set them up with something and go, hey, what's that? Boom, it's a hit. Yeah. So same mentality. So I don't know if anybody else has correlated all these things with gaming in their DJ life, but it really is, to me, for crying out loud, this is called a controller. What we DJ on is called a
controller.
Right. So
I thought you were going to say, no, it's called this, and just totally mess with us.
No, because it's just funny, because you'll do a search online sometimes for custom, maybe do custom Denon controller, custom Pioneer controller, and some of the things that will come back will be customized game controllers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it's closer than you think. John, I want to know when you came up with this idea, where were you at on that?
It's just that again, we talk so much about the music side of it, but there's things that came from gaming, and some of it is the manipulation of buttons, working buttons, and that hands-on side of it. Timing was, how many games that we played that you knew that you had we didn't put a count to it, but that you had to push the button and then they run and they jump and this and that. And there's so much of those things that translate into what we do as we're being hands-on with our mixing and such. Those were part of it. The other part of it was our gaming in some cases was some of our first introductions to sound drops. Prior to, if we were doing board games or things like that, we didn't have sound effects. That didn't happen in games. But all of a sudden, when we got into the digital gaming world, there was, all the way to the beginning, there was the ball. Boing, 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 boing. There sounds and how those could be intermingling with the different actions and what was going on really were some of the early drops. And then as we got into more advanced games, even in just a few years, now some of them had a soundtrack going on in the background, and some of them had music when certain things would happen, and those became those little earworms for us, for a lot of us. And we walked around, when Super Mario came out, everybody was walking around, you do that even today, and pretty much everybody knows what you're referring to, and that's from what, 30-some years ago? 40-some years 40 years ago.
85, I think.
Yeah, in the mid to early 80s is when those things started to pop out, or at least that's when Donkey Kong came out. So there's just some things that the gaming introduced us to, so many small aspects of it that really help shape that concept of being a DJ and utilizing the music and drops and different things and putting it all together for a performance or show.
You were even kind of hit on the whole idea of, everybody was kind of humming that song. The idea of being able to play off that nostalgia too. Like when you're thinking about DJing and stuff like that, think about those tracks or those instant, like I could hear this at a distance, like, the theme song of when he would be going into Bowser's castle, like I hear that, anything drop like that. And suddenly you're going to get that, type of factor, being thrown that, because we had that interaction, it makes sense to us to even potentially like, I'm just going to throw this in. Let's just see what happens. Like throw that in. And all of a sudden you like the eyes would bug out and you get the, oh my gosh, I can't believe he's playing this type of idea. Yeah.
In my music selection, I have an entire folder of video game sounds. And every once in a while, I'll drop in a scratch with a chicka, 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 whoa, 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 stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So it's more ingrained in us than we think. Because when John brought this up, I'm thinking, oh great, I get to show off more of my nerd gear that I have sitting around. Which, by the way, it is going to be my retirement because I have the whole box, all of the pamphlets, a little button, everything for that. I have a lot of this stuff that at some point I'm going to sell when I get ready to retire. I have a lot of things like this that I'm going to retire off this stuff. But when he first said that, to me, it was like, oh, good, I get to show stuff. Then I started thinking, I'm like, well, I know the music thing was big for me because I wanted to make the music back then. And then became into DJing where, wait, I can play something for someone. People want to hear electronic music. What? And Herbie Hancock with Rocket, and that whole thing was like all digital, like all of it. And it was like, that was being accepted because you understand before that, it wasn't there. Like someone made a comment in there about live bands and stuff like that. The digital stuff was before that. They're going, you can't do a show with just a keyboard. Nowadays, you can go see guys do an entire show with no instruments on stage whatsoever, and they make millions.
Mm-hmm. They're called DJs.
Well, not all the time.
There was a thought that I had there, and it just completely went.
It's my ranting. Think of it about ranting.
So MJ, you mentioned, of course, your early music thing, and that took me back to the very first Tandy computer we had. This would have been not the color computer, but the first Tandy. And for those of you who aren't familiar with that, Tandy was under the Radio Shack world, and Tandy computers were actually some of the very first. You had Apple with their, I think they were in the Apple One, or their very first, maybe their first Macintosh, which was that little box that sat on the table. Then there were some PCs that were coming out, and then IBM specifically were really the big in that. And then Radio Shack came out with the Tandy. And some of those Tandy units were really quite competitive and decent quality compared to some of the others. So that had a full piano capability where you could, with the keyboard, there was a piano key, and it became so frustrating that I couldn't make anything. I couldn't even play, Are You Sleeping, what have you. So my musical thing was jumping back to that color computer. We had a dot matrix printer, and to do the in essence, the rhythm line, what have you, of Are You Sleeping? That kind of a thing. That's how
Skrillex made dubstep.
Exactly. But it was a dot matrix printer, and I remember, God, I went through so much paper, and I remember Dad being so ticked off. It's like, what are you printing? Nothing. It looks like it. That paper's not free. But listen. What am I listening to? Okay.
There was definitely, for those who, you might think there is a chasm between this generation and the adults, but it was worse back then. You have no idea. Like, to deal with my father and video games, it never touched me. Why did I die? It never even touched me. So it was a different thing. My friend Eric, who's literally my age, I was talking to him about the Xbox, his kids, hey, what do you have? You play? He goes, no, I can't figure out these controllers with all these double thumb things. And I'm thinking, whoa, this dude's my age. Because I'm thinking, I got that motorcycle racing game. Him and I grew up riding and racing together. We still ride together. I'm like, hey, maybe we get online and race each other. I can't move all those buttons and stuff. I'm like, okay.
It's practice. It's a practice thing.
But I just presumed that over the years you learn, you pick up, you try, you fail, you get, it's just, it's always been a part of lives. I remember, no joke, when I was out on tour in the 90s, this was the late 90s, I had to purchase Madden football because in every green room, in every place I toured, they had Madden football and everybody played Madden football. So you had to be good at Madden football. So when you go on tour and you get in there in the green room, you had to jump in. So I remember having to buy that, and I'm not even a big sports. I love playing sports, but I hate watching them. But I remember that was all, again, part of socializing, like Dan talked about. You just had to. So I'm on tour with all these bands. I had to be good at that because I'm playing them every weekend throughout. If we go on a 2-week tour, we're playing it every day at every stop. So
think about some of the progression too. Like when we talked about some of the controllers, like you were talking about, your buddy with the double thumbs, and it got me thinking. If you think back to kind of like our first, the first controller, a turntable.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So you have, play, pause, or play, stop. That's basically it. Right. And then maybe you have a pitch as that got added to, to speed it up and whatnot. And then, and kind of like the same idea, the Atari had the 2-button joystick and that was about it. And as we've developed, it went to CD players who now had a few more buttons, and then even our first controllers only had a few buttons. And now you look at the ones that we have, and there's 50 buttons on the thing that do 8,000 different pieces. It's just kind of funny that it's developed, and if you had been, let's assume for a second the technology was there, that when we first made that jump into controllers, they had all these buttons. Everybody would have been like, I can't do it. Like, there's too much. But it's because it's gradually gone on, and now we're adding pads, and and suddenly it's not a big deal. I push that, I do that. Think about it. Also, how many people have come up to you, like if you have a controller, I'm not even talking about one that has like 8,000 buttons, but let's say you have one that has a bunch of buttons on it, right? I love it, the number 8,000, in case you know. How many people have come up to you at an event and go, oh my gosh, like there's so many buttons. Do you even know what they all do? Whether that's true or not, you say, absolutely I do. But that's the kind of the same idea. There's somebody coming from the outside who has no idea. Kind of like, you have a different generation who looks at the buttons on a controller and go, there's even ones back here, like my fingers can't reach around to, oh wait, maybe they do, like like that idea. And so just that progression also has kind of technology has made that progression, and they realize you have to start small and build up.
Good example on that, Dan. Perfectly, you bringing up the early days of DJing, because when it started, it was a sound, and something you mixed those two sounds together with. This generation has those two sounds, probably two more decks with sounds, several sample banks with sounds, now with Scratch Bank that you can just thumb into it from somewhere. All of these running at the same time. So you have upwards of 20 different possible sounds, including drops, like John talked about drops. Mm-hmm. And it's normal for them. And so I'm so thankful that I'm still being able to be a part of this, because like Dan said, if you came from the mentality of sound, something to mix it with, and now you have 20 different possibilities that you can and probably need to at some point throw in the mix, and like John said, timing. When do I throw that chicka MJ in there? And it's a timing. You got to wait for that. You got to wait for the little vine to swing back, and your guy to jump on the vine and swing across to jump off. So it's chicka swing, and we're down.
Pitfall, man, really? You brought Pitfall in?
That's right. That's right.
Wow.
don't make me bring in ET or what was the one, the dungeon? Where you're overhead of the dungeon and you went along with your little sword and
Zelda.
No, way before Zelda.
Oh,
it was an Atari one. It was kind of like on the equivalent of Atari Tanks. I can't think of it. Someone in the chat room guarantees knows what that is. So yeah. But there's so much of that it goes in there. Like I said, it's just a different mentality. So like I said, we moved into the computer age of what year did you guys start using a computer to DJ with? Mine was late, and Wednesday night. Join me Wednesday night, because I have a guest on. It's coming Wednesday night. John Holman's his name. He gave me my first break back in the day, but he also has had a lot of history in the beginnings of computer DJing, where he actually helped with building the programs, and he brought me PC DJ way back. And I hated it so much that it took me forever to get back to DJing with the computer. So I didn't actually start until like late 2009. Well, it was 2010, DJing with the computer. So when did you guys start with a computer?
I was before that.
Most people were.
Yeah, I wanted the number that keeps coming in my head is 2008. I want to say it was somewhere between 2006 and 2008, somewhere within that stretch.
Okay, John?
Just trying to think here. I want to say, I think the first computer that I was taking out would have been 2003, 4.
Wow.
Yeah, I wasn't doing a ton with it, but the most incredible software was released to the industry about 2000. It came onto my radar about 2002. So,
John, what was the name of this wonderful software?
This software revolutionized music playback. People would line up for miles to be able to hear the incredibly synchronized lining up of two songs and segueing from one to the other, all done digitally. Yes.
My point that I prefer to not ignore yours involved the fact that if we look at my life and we go 10 years into the future, 2031, that may seem like forever ago, but you think you go backwards that exact amount of time. I was spinning, because Denon had those 1200s where you could put thumb drives in. So I was putting music on thumb drives and spinning on the Denons, that way. I didn't have to use a computer, but let's just talk about computers. All right, so now we're going to take you guys 14, 15, 18 years into the future. What's DJing going to be like for you? Or the next generation? If let's say you're not around then, or you get out of the game when they introduce the 12th a turntable add-on to where you have like what was that, Rush's drum machine, but you have that many turntables around you. What do you think you're going to be doing? I mean, do you think you think things are still going to be the same? Do you think it's going to be more of a performer, or do you think it's all going to be done by the computer and without us?
I think it's going to be done. Obviously, there's going to be a lot more digital side of it, but I think that whole concept of the virtual reality and to be able to engage in that direction is going to be huge. And I think that's going to be where the performers will be performing in 3D and doing things that way compared to just down in front on decks. I think there's going to be some different things that are going on in the air, and it'll be kind of more of a mix of music playback and, for lack of a better way to describe it, dance. I could see that becoming something.
So you say if I can get digitally saved as a young person, I can be DJing well into my 90s, but showing an avatar, a 3D avatar of a young me.
Exactly. And if they can make Mark Hamill look like, the younger Luke Skywalker, you've got some a chance there.
While I agree that might be down the road, I think 10 years might be a little quick for some of that. I know some technology jumps really fast, but if I think back to 10 years ago, like there's a lot of things that have jumped, but how we're playing or what we're playing on has kind of remained pretty solid or pretty steady. So the one thing that I see, we get 10 years down the road is more of a change in the how. So you talked about the computer. I think that's going to be gone. I think it's that the all-in-ones are going to become the key. They're going to be the way. And if 5G becomes reliable and we go even deeper, it's going to become a streaming, or at the very least, you're going to be paying a subscription service to have access to the music. And if you're going to be playing something you don't, you're going to be pulling stuff down for a cache of 24, 36 hours, whatever might be the case. I just feel that I hate to say it because I'm very much about the physical copy of some sort or fashion, whether it's a physical digital copy or whether, but as I've seen more and more of this coming about, I still see it. I see it happening more. Now, one thing that I heard, I was watching a thing last week. I belong to Crate Hackers, and they were doing a thing with War and Peace and talking with a couple of the different guys, and they were saying, one of the things though that will keep the physical around is the fact that the physical opens up the remixability of songs, where if the only thing that's available is a stream, how do I get that to remix it to make it better or to make it different?
Mm-hmm.
And so that could be the one thing that kind of keeps those physical copies around. But again, I do see that streaming is becoming a very stronghold, especially 10 years. I mean, 10 years, that's I think doable for sure.
I have faith. I have faith in technology.
I have one more thing I want to share, because we talked about the early days. And like I said, for me, a lot of it was computer stuff. And, getting my first Windows 3.1 computer and Windows 3 and all those way before there was much of anything.
And was that your first computer for music playback?
Like an actual PC type thing?
Yeah, the first one you used to play back for an audience. What was that computer?
Audience?
Uh-huh.
Again, remember, it was only 10 years ago.
That's
because remember, like I said, I jumped off of CDs and jumped onto those Denons that had the thumb drives. So for years, I just would put music on a thumb drive, and I would go there with my two controllers, and it had a keyboard hooked up in the center. So I would click on this one, type in what I want, scroll through, load it, play it. So I was working on a screen about that big, and I got tired of only seeing 3 songs at a time. That's when I went to computers. So my first DJ computer was a Lenovo gaming computer. Literally, It was the computer before the one I'm using.
Wow.
It was a high-end gaming computer. It came with Windows 7 that I downgrade. Again, me customizing, because it had 2 hard drives, and I wanted to put the hard drive on one and the music on another. So I went from 7 to XP, because XP was small enough to fit on that singular small SSD that it had. And put, I told you, I hack everything. Put XP on there, and then ran virtual on it and on that and the other, because it had dual hard drives, and then ran my music on the other. And that's why, I don't know if you saw a while back, I posted the fact that I literally, because I kept all my, as I transferred the stuff, virtual just keeps going and going and going. I have 10 years worth of, because virtual records play history. I have 10 years of play history there, to where I can go back. What did I play on November 3rd, 2013, and I could tell you the entire list. So that's the technology, and that was one of the best things I think came out of the computer age, is because I cannot tell you how many times that I would play the same song twice a night and not remember that I played it.
Mm-hmm.
but this now has a little red mark, and I'm like, yay! I played that. I don't have to worry about keeping track of stuff. But the early 90s, first like actual computer again, wanting to make music, I always did. I bought a computer program called Samplitude. So if you know what Ableton looks like, you know, with your multiple lines of stuff, this was like the very first Ableton type thing. It wasn't Ableton, it was the Ableton type thing. And it was more or less just a multi-channel you could throw songs into. And waves was the main thing back then. And you could manipulate them and make stuff. And this is what it came on.
Okay. Wait. You 3D printed the save icon from Word? Sorry, that was a joke. That was a meme I heard earlier this week or something.
Oh, no. But this one, like I said, it was a multi-channel, channel DAW, digital audio workstation. Couldn't do a whole lot. This one was made in 90-something. I paid $300 for this.
Yeah.
And made a lot of songs with it. And again, I was doing this in 1994, 95, 96, before I went on to Cubase and then went on to Ableton after that and a bunch of other ones I tried. But the beginnings, like John said, it was more than just DJing in the crowd for me. It was the computer side and the music where I got to put the two of those together in that world. That's where I still geek out about is the technology and the tweaking and the different things that I can make. And like Dan said, if you have streaming only song and you have this version, let's say you like, and then the streaming service decides that it's not going to carry that song you like anymore, you don't have that song to play ever again, let alone edit your own in the version you like. The song's too long, I want to shorten it. So I think, like Dan said, there has to be the thing where we're manipulating. You know, perhaps all the files will go to, we'll have computers big enough we won't have to worry about compressed files like MP3s. They can be really, really high-end stuff that isn't compressed and stuff. So, like I said, I love this stuff. This is where I've always done this stuff, and I think that's why I love the virtual DJ the way I do, because you can manipulate it so much. It's why I like Android. My first 4 smartphones were Apple, and I realized they don't let me do anything to them. I jailbroke one of them just to get video on it, but I went to Android because I could do anything I want on it, and that's again where a lot of this stuff is for me. That how they crisscross more than you think they do. Like when John said that, I'm like, what? And I started thinking about it. I'm like, oh my gosh, those two worlds, especially for me, are really close. So I don't know if it's like that way for everybody who's watching. I think Dan and John both have tapped into their world and understood that. I don't know if it's like that for all DJs, but you know.
Dan, what was your first computer for playback?
It was the personal laptop that I had. It was a Gateway, some middle of the road level laptop that I had. I remember it was red. That's about all.
So my very first one was a Grape iMac. If you go back to 1998, the iMac, this was one of the early iMacs, and it was a translucent body, but it was purple. And it had a 233 processor in the thing, whatever. Because I had a Grape that had the 233, and then I got a gray that was a 333. And oh boy, did I think when we would put that DJ software on there and we could put those 200 songs on, because that's all the hard drive would hold. We thought we had the world, but actually it'd hold more than that. But
yeah, that first one I told you I had that I got the Windows 3.1 was a 486 DX2 processor, which is like ridiculously slow. It came with a 1200 modem, not 12,000. 1200, which is a fax machine. Actually, it's slower than a fax machine. And the amount of, like, I have a smartwatch. It's kind of a smartwatch. It's a Fit thing. This thing almost has as much memory in it as that Windows computer came with, because it came with 13 gig of memory. That was it. That's all that thing came with. And this thing almost has as much as that. My phone has 10 times as much as that. So, like Dan said, all-in-ones, maybe. might be walking instead of a computer. We have this in our pocket in the future. Walk up to a controller, they connect. The screen's on the controller. It's picking everything up from your phone that's in your pocket. You're DJing. You walk away. You're done DJing. That's where I think it's going to be. Because I think in the future that this is going to be everything to where we walk in our house. If we want a bigger screen and a keyboard, we sit down at a desk and it's going to connect to the keyboard, do stuff. We get up, walk away, go to the kitchen. There'll be a monitor there. Everything running off of this. Go to our TV like 5G. TV will be running off of this. You don't need to have any of that. Everything will be through these, I think so. And I think the DJ world will be close to the same to where, like I said, in this one here, I have almost a half between what it comes with and the memory I put in it. There's almost half a terabyte here. And a lot of it's music that I carry with me for emergencies. Mm-hmm. So I'm geeking.
That love of technology started for us so long ago. And I think that's when
people online talking about like the touch screens and stuff. This is my opinion on this. They're cool because when I first saw them, I posted a few years ago that somebody here in the city made a full touch screen all-in-one that he made that controlled everything, and I got to see it. It was way before the emulator and all of that, and I thought it was cool. But just like, you know, a lot of times we like to have physical buttons and stuff to turn in our car, whether it be a radio or whatever. That's why with DJing, we want that physical thing, that knob to grab a hold of, that scratch, because again, there's guys out there that don't even use the platter all night long. And I couldn't imagine DJing without a platter now. Like, you know, I have friends that use that nudge button to get the songs to match. I don't know if I could use the nudge button. I don't even know if I have the mental space to, because I'm so used to tapping or pulling or holding or the center of it. So that's why we like the stuff with buttons. And I think that's probably going to be that way for a long time. It would be like trying to play a guitar without actual strings, you know, virtual strings or laser strings. They're just that nobody wants to do that.
Nobody wants to see that. Nobody. Good. Thank you, gentlemen. So coming up when we finish tonight out at DJNTV.com/chill hanging with Howie on Monday night. Tonight, his special guest is Rachel Lynch, and they're going to be talking a lot of different things tonight. And of course, I think that there'll probably be pizza brought up during that conversation. But jump in, DJNTV.com/chill. They're going to be recording a segment that will be uploaded to YouTube and such later in the week, and then to Facebook after that. So you guys will be able to watch it live tonight. And then once they're done, you can hang out and talk shop a little bit. Tomorrow night, Tuesday night with Ben Stowe, we're not sure if this is going to be working. The next topic we're going to be lining up, we want to be talking about batteries, the tool batteries. There's a lot of different size tool batteries. Some of those go to inverters, which can power our DJ gear. But there's questions about what's the difference between a 2 amp hour battery and a 4 amp hour battery and a 6 amp. So Ben's going to dig into the battery thing, but we don't know if we're going to be able to do it tomorrow night or if it's going to be next week. So keep an eye out for it. If we can do it tomorrow, it'll be on a Facebook page. And then tomorrow night in the chill room, then Brian and Jay will be back and covering another topic in the chill room tomorrow night at, I believe, 9 o'clock Eastern. 10 o'clock Eastern. Ben would be 9 o'clock Eastern. So Wednesday night, MJ, you got...
Yeah, Wednesday at 9 p.m. My guest, John Homan's coming in, and we will be talking about the history of DJ programs. And this man, like I said, was in with the building of some of them and the history he has and some names and things that he's going to drop. It's going to blow your freaking mind.
How much awesome Megaseg talk is going to happen Wednesday night? I'm looking forward to it.
He may talk about that because that was an early one.
That was a very early one, and that's one of the reasons why.
He was one of the people that originally helped develop the PC DJ. Plus, he was on a panel years before that with was it Hall & Oates and Madonna and a bunch of people talking about in the future we'll all be using computers, and they pretty much laughed him out of the room.
Yeah, I remember some of those early discussions. So
it'll be a good night. And then I'll probably be doing my 2-hour set after that on Twitch.
Sounds good.
Dan, what are you going to be doing the rest of the week?
Digging myself out.
Shoveling snow.
and finishing the booth. Anyway.
A bunch of people are very excited to see that, Dan. So definitely when you get it done, we have to dedicate a whole show to that. So, no, for real.
I don't know if it's worth the whole show, but that's fine.
Because we had lots of people comment. I can't wait to see when this is done. So that, just like it'd be a new controller, I guarantee there's people out there that want to see the full details of what you did. So,
maybe
I'm for real.
Maybe I should build one out of PVC so we can compare and contrast.
I don't know if you can make it that light.
I have my piano X stand that I carry sometimes. the 2-arm one, not the single arm.
Actually, I have a concept for a table, a DJ table that would work wonderfully. The night that I'm going to bring it that night, I'll talk about my table. Dan will have his, and MJ.
I'll have my 2X stands.
2X stand. Oh, this will be great.
That I've been carrying since what?
This is
late 90s on tour.
What a great show. This will be so awesome. Dan, take us home. We got to go. Howie and Rachel are up next on DJNTV.com/chill.
Awesome. All right. So thank you very much for taking the time to join us tonight. Hopefully you got to geek out a little bit with us as well, remembering some of those video games from your childhood, and even just kind of like, how does that even relate to DJing, and what's the future, both of gaming, could help you determine what the future of DJing is going to be. So, again, how that tie is a lot closer than we may have originally realized. But thank you very much. Have yourself a wonderful night. Be safe. We'll see you next time. Bye. Bye.